Hey, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking to help us multiply engagement and loyalty. I'm Rob Alvarez. I'm a consultant, I'm a coach, and I'm the founder here at Professor Game. And I'm also a professor of gamification and game-inspired solutions at IE University, IE Business School, EFMD, EBS University, and other places around the world. And before we dive into the interview, if you're struggling with engagement in your business and are looking to find out how to make your users stay with you, you will find our free community full of resources quite useful. You can find it for free in the links below in the description. So engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast. And we have Sierra with us today. So Sierra, we need to know, are you prepared to engage?
Absolutely.
Let's do this. Let's go. We have Sierra Grandy. Grandy, is that right?
Yep. Correct.
Who is a recent lawyer, disability advocate, and business owner, and she plays her life as if it were a quest and teaches others to do the same thing using her Questify Your Life system. So Sierra, is there anything else we should know before we dive into our questions?
I think that covers it. That's a really good bio. That's always the hardest part for me, is being like, what did I write a while ago? What did I identify as then? And now what do I identify now? That worked. That worked well.
Fantastic. I was saying your name and I remembered there was or is, I'm not even sure, this game company called Sierra.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm trying to remember which, because I can almost see the logo just flying in my head, but Sierra Games, maybe? Sierra Entertainment.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll have to check that out. I mean,
it was founded in 1979, but it disappeared. So they did have some very, very big stuff. They had King's Quest, Half-Life, which is the where Counter-Strike came from, Leisure Suit Larry, which is probably not PG content, and some other stuff I'm seeing here on Wikipedia. But yes, it's definitely something that existed. It used to be Activision Blizzard, apparently. But yes.
Oh. Well, very cool.
There you go.
I love some trivia. Now, if I go to a trivia night, I might have, it might be a little more helpful. I am surprisingly terrible at trivia.
It depends on the topic, I guess. And you kind of have to get lucky, right? When there's trivia, you never know what's coming up.
That's
knowing
true.
Everything is not a thing.
That is absolutely true. If it's psychology, Taylor Swift, or gamification, I maybe even a little bit of law in there, I've got it. If it has anything to do with things that actually matter, I'm not sure.
Makes sense. So, Sierra, you're talking about law and all these things that you're into. And in the pre-interview chat, we were discussing some of the many things that you do. So if we were to follow you around for a day, a week, or whatever you want to go into, how would that look and feel like? We want to, sort of understand, what does your life look like at this point?
Yeah.
Today, I guess.
As twofold. It really depends. So I'm a business owner, which means that everything kind of in my life surrounds that business. So I don't do a 9-to-5. Rather, I just try my best to get things done if I have the energy to do so. I'm disabled and neurodivergent, so I often have energy issues. So I don't know what the day is going to bring. But day to day, an example would be today, wake up, get ready, procrastinate doing emails, answer a couple emails, get set up all of this, talk to you, and then I have a bunch of advocacy work because I'm in leadership positions on 3 different disability mental health councils. I consider it marketing, but more so it's a huge perk of being a business owner is that I can give my time to organizations in my community and help them. And throughout all of this, I am making everything into a quest or a game. A quest is more of a mindset. This is Dungeons and Dragons, making stories, having things be a very specific vibe, knowing the start to the conclusion. That's kind of how a quest is for me, is goal setting. And then a game is adding challenge and reward and making it happen. So, most not all games are quests, but most quests have some game elements in them. Anyway, so I do that, and I'll dress up, and when I'm dressing up, I'm like, what persona am I going to be today. And it's really helpful. It's helpful to know, it's helpful to give permission to be silly and creative and playful. And there's a lot of research on play. And so I'm really trying to just incentivize myself to enjoy life more. So that's a little bit about what some of the stuff I am doing. And some days, like yesterday, I do public speaking. So yesterday I woke up and I went and taught police officers in a crisis intervention training about mental health recovery. So I shared my story, which is what I do often. I speak on mental health recovery and neurodiversity and talk about, like, when I was 11, I was first hospitalized. By 14, I was in residential treatment. And by 18, I was undergoing electroconvulsive therapy, which is modern day shock therapy. And then in and out of different schools and hospitals. And I got really lucky in 2019 and got into mental health recovery, which correlates with also starting to use gamification. And so those were together as I built more and more of my life and finished my psychology degree with an econ minor. And I then was like, I'm not ready to work. I don't know what to be doing. And so I took the LSAT and I applied to law school, got into law school, did law school, which still can't believe that I survived that. Took the bar, passed it, and then I was like, never mind. I don't want to full-time practice law. I don't want to do that. I do pro bono work for the disability community, but I don't want to make my living off of that. So that's a bit about me.
Cool. And you discussed many ways in which you implement what you do, and since you've been doing it for a while as well, I'm sure you've had ups and downs like we all have. And we would like to know of a time where actually one of the times where you were setting out to do something and just, for whatever reason, for you, one of your clients, one of the people you work with, whatever you want to go for, it can be anonymous, by the way. I'm happy with being anonymous.
Yeah.
It just didn't work, right? It just didn't go your way or your client's way. And how did you recover from that? What did you learn from that? Or wherever you want to guide us there.
Oh, man, I have so many. Because the more you do, so I think of things like, do you play Dungeons and Dragons? Because I know you talk a lot about it, but do you play Dungeons and Dragons?
Haven't. It's I don't want to say it's a regret, because I did see people in high school playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I was a massive nerd, don't get me wrong, but I saw the people playing Dungeons and Dragons and I said, oh my goodness, those nerds, right? Being a nerd myself, or a geek or whatever, is most appropriate these days. And I very much regret not having taken that a bit more seriously, if that makes any sense. And then after that, it's I've been curious about this for the past, I would say, 8 years, and struggling to find time and focus to actually get started on Dungeons and Dragons or any RPGs. But that's why the bottom line is I haven't.
Yeah. And that's why I play when I play Dungeons and Dragons, I'm the DM. I like to make the consequences rather than make the choices. But with that, to answer your question about failure, I'm going to use a D&D kind of an analogy, which is the more you're doing, the more you're rolling the dice. And when you're rolling the dice, the likelihood of you getting a nat 1, much higher. So the more you do, the more you try, you will fail. But failure often is one of the best story mechanics. And that's how I try to think of it. Oh man, there's so many different failures. Some of them are really dark. Some are like my second year of law school. I had, my main quest at the time was be a law clerk, do good work, and try to get a job for once I graduate law school. But I had this task that I just could not get my head around. And I ended up in a meltdown because I'm autistic and that happens. And I was under my desk and I felt like I was just, failing. And with that, I learned a lot of things about how to process those emotions in a way where story is helpful. So yes, I am under my desk because I'm having a meltdown because this is not working for me. But also I realized that path, what I was doing was just not working. For other people though, oh man, I got in a fight on LinkedIn. It wasn't a fight, but I'm when I'm thinking failure, it's Fight's too strong, but it was a disagreement because what I had done is on LinkedIn, I talk a lot about neurodiversity, mental health, disability advocacy, because that's a great audience. And maybe an unpopular opinion, but I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is so clear on the tone you are supposed to be throwing out there that it's just, I'm like, oh, I will use that, but like spin it so that people can hear about ableism. But this one was like somebody had wrote an article for a law firm about neurodiversity, and they had used the term neurodiverse incorrectly because neurodiverse is just a shortened version of neurodiversity. Neurodiversity, all brains are different. Neurodiverse, a bunch of different brains coming together. The goal of the neurodiversity movement is to have a neurodiverse like group of people and organizations. Neurodivergent people are the minority. Neurodiverse and neurodivergent are used synonymously, and it is my silliest pet peeve. I wish I could let it go. So I wrote this out. Like I was like just trying to gently like correct the article, teach people, have a learning lesson, and the author saw it and like commented, and that's what I call a LinkedIn fight. It wasn't even a fight. But he then deleted his comment. I deleted the whole post. It was fine. But I think about that, and the reason I bring that up as a failure is because again, the more you try, the more you learn that sometimes you're going to swing and miss. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a, they always talk about Michael Jordan's thing of, how many, he talked about how many shots he missed, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he got many shots, winning shots and all that stuff. But it's also because he took a lot of shots. He missed a lot of shots and he trained a lot to make sure that, under the right conditions, he would be able to take the good shots at the right time. So, yeah, you have to take a lot of shots to be able to make...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I like to think of it like RuneScape, where anything you do, you're getting experience points. It's also like the neuroplasticity part of your brain, but I prefer the gamification logic of it, where anything you're doing, everything is a practiced skill. So you're putting effort into something, any amount of effort, that is then building up a skill tree or a level. And the more you do, the more you can kind of unlock. And that's how I think of everything. Because I don't have enough time to put experience into everything I want to learn. But I know that I can learn those things if I spend time working on the skill tree. So then I will, like, I literally pin my quests. And so I have several boards over here that you can see and one here that you can't. And with that, I have, like, it just goes with the Questify Your Life system because it's the journey, the character, and the quest. And it's just a way to bring yourself into a fantasy type of game while still participating in this world.
Cool. Love it. Love all of it. So, Sierra, let's actually turn it around and talk about a time where it did work. Things went your way and you were happy about the results you got and you want to talk about it, essentially.
Oh, man. See, I've been thinking about this because I knew this was coming, and I'm an incredibly lucky person. After I got into mental health recovery, a lot of things just kind of fell my way, and I'm really, really grateful for that. And so there's been a lot of things that have went well. Just like passing the bar, that was a whole thing. The bar exam was a lot, and I completely convinced myself that I had not passed, because I was also writing a thesis during some of bar prep because I procrastinate doing some stuff by doing other things. That's one. And I also had a huge keynote last Friday. That's another huge success for me. That was an event that I helped create. They asked me to come in and then try to decide some of the specifics for their neurodiversity content after me. And I was just, that's a win. And with that, I want to actually ask you, it's a silly question, but it's going, in case any of your audience doesn't know what neurodiversity is, I'd like to give an example. But when you, in your mind's eye, imagine let's say a sloth in a sundress, so an animal, a piece of clothing, in your mind's eye, what pops up? What is your imagined sloth in a sundress, if you can add language to that?
For some reason, it was a black and white sloth, and the sundress, I imagined a dress which was yellow.
Oh, fascinating. Um, I love that. So for me, I live with aphantasia, so I don't get a visual. I have depth and vibes, and I know there is a sloth there because it's all story based. So it's like I've been told that, so it's there, but I don't get the actual visual, and that's only about 1% of the population, or at least it's theorized, who just don't have an imagination like that. But the difference, the huge difference between the way I imagine a sloth and you imagine a sloth with just an animal and a piece of clothing is what neurodiversity really is. Every brain is different and we process information differently. And so when you do that exercise in a huge group of people, you start to realize like some people, their initial imagination is the sloth from Zootopia. Sometimes people are like they create a ton of context because why else would a sloth be wearing a sundress? But it's just a really good way to point out that everyone has a bias to believing that what's in their brain is what is happening in other people's brains, and that's just not the case. And I was just curious to, I don't know, see like how your brain works.
Cool, love it. And Sierra, after having this, you have a system, even the Questify Your Life system. What does that look like? Is this a series of steps? Is this just an approach? Do you put on some lens? Like, what does that look like? Can you give us a maybe a pitch, or I don't know, how would you like to approach this?
So Questify Your Life is a system of 3 parts. You have your journey, your character, and your quests. Your journey you can think of like your map. Like if you're in Skyrim, you have the beginning of your map, but you know that you have this big map. It's how you play the game. Your quests may be your destination or your goals or your objectives or your tasks, but the way that you get to your quests, the way you participate in the world, that's your journey. I always recommend that people take the time to identify and add language to their values so that they know that when they're going on their journey and choosing their quests, that they have chosen what is best for them rather than being sold a bunch of other quests from other people. Because we live in a society where other people are often profiting off of really encouraging people to go on quests they do not need to be going on. They're not profiting off of going on those quests. Other people are profiting off of it. So that's what journey is. It's your map. It's how you're going about it. It's also how you reward yourself, how you add levels. So I have a reward system. It changes all the time. This is incredibly flexible. The ADHD in me doesn't I'm not a consistent person. So I try to make things as flexible and usable as possible. And so this has changed so many times, but it's always these 3 steps. You have a journey, and then you kind of go into like who as a character is going on this journey. We all have a character. That's a very different thing than like, oh, I'm going to customize like the heck out of a character on Skyrim. Can't do that as much. I mean, it's my favorite part, character customization on games. So like I wish you could customize some more stuff, but I can't. And so instead you can do aesthetics. What do you look like? What do you want other people to perceive? You have acceptance. They're taking steps to accept that there are things about you that you might not like, but it is better for you to accept them and like work that into your story rather than trying to fight against it. Because that's just a lot of energy that you probably don't have. Then you have simple but not easy. These are the quests and just the mindset to actually do things you need to be doing. An example would be movement. In theory, movement is simple, but it's not easy, at least for a lot of people, to like get started, know what to do, make sure they're not getting hurt. Same with nutrition, even sleep for that matter. And so I use those like categories, and I use these categories to blend in self-care in a way that's really doable for me. And that anytime I hear like a new tip or any of the coping skills or any like I used to do support groups for people with mental health conditions, I used to facilitate those. So when we were talking about coping skills, I could like blend it into the system as well. And finally, I have, and this one's silly, but it's personas. I have 4 different personas that I think of as like level ups or kind of like if in Skyrim you have different armor that has different like stats that you can add, or I also sometimes think of it as the fairy from Zelda, like on your shoulder, telling you what to do. And so I have Elf, who is the persona that like gets like is like it's this one. It kind of a performer, competent is the lawyer version of me. Very analytical, logical. And then you have like a cozy halfling or a hobbit who like is trying to make sure that those simple but not easy tasks are also enjoyable. So making soup would be a hobbit task, and then you can like light some candles and make things like aesthetic, put on some tavern music. And so it's just adding an extra level of intentional vibe to a situation. A fairy is another one, and that one's where you're getting creative, in a flow, having fun, allowing yourself to be messy. And then I have Gremlin, who is the version of me at 11 p.m. at night who doesn't want to go to sleep and is just like stuck on my phone scrolling. That's who Gremlin is. And they're all important. And if you're in one for too long, the others are being neglected. And so trying to make sure, and these are all choices. I don't believe I'm any of these. And so if somebody's living with like dissociative identity disorder, do not recommend this part of the system for you. But it is a grab bag, so you can take some of the system and leave what else doesn't work for you. And then finally, quests. And I have so many different types of quests. And then I will go on. There's two quests that I think are worthy to point out here. The first are rejection quests. Rejection quests are quests where you intentionally go after something in an attempt to get rejected. The huge caveat is that you need to be completely qualified and give it your best shot. And completely qualified is like, don't take that too literally. Like if you're like 80% qualified for something, shoot your shot type of idea. But if you get like a rejection letter or a rejection email, you have succeeded and you can give yourself like your reward points. And if you get accepted, you've lost your quest, but you got the thing that you were applying for anyway. And it helps reframe rejection. And then the other one is, and something that I've kind of based my entire business on, are dragon quests. So if I believe that this is a video game or a like Dungeons and Dragons story in the world we are in, there is not any magic, right? We live in kind of more of a dystopian nightmare type of vibe rather than a fantasy vibe right now. And I'm trying to think of it as more of a fantasy vibe. So I think of social injustices as dragons. So disability issues, racism, homophobia, classism, environmental issues, the list goes on and on and on and on. All these things are much bigger than any one person. They are being upheld by a group of people who are benefiting from them. A lot of people are ignorant to them until they're hurt by them. And so it's just easier to have like a thing like these are dragons that can be fought. For me, I needed to do this because I would often see these social injustices, especially once I was in law school learning about the actual like effects in the United States on certain systems. And I would get overwhelmed. I'd be like, I can't do anything. I am powerless. And like seeing a dragon, like a bunch of dragons, you just run. But instead, I was like, okay, but what if I specialize in one dragon? If a different type of dragon is hurting somebody, I can help support that person in their fight. But there are other leaders for those dragons. I will choose a dragon and be a leader for mine. And I will not go at it alone, because that's how you get hurt by a dragon. You don't fight a dragon alone. And so I started to create these like little principles and rules for myself to help make life a little more fun. So I'm not like always discouraged that there isn't something I can do, while also able to make quests and make progress. And it's been really successful. I help teach attorneys about disability. I help different advisory councils throughout the state of Minnesota with how they're structured to assess the mental health systems in their counties. I advise a national nonprofit on mental health. through a committee. Like there's just so many things that I've had really awesome opportunities for as I've been able to learn more and more about the dragon that I've chosen, which is basically disability. It's disability, mental health, and neurodiversity, ableism, really. So yeah, those are two of the many different types. There's so many. There's so much here.
Nice. Very, very interesting. I love the approach and the way that you see it, so that things seem to be at least a bit more manageable, which is something that we tend to struggle with a lot. And Sierra, you've given a huge amount of recommendations. How about somebody that you would like to hear in an interview like this one, sort of a featured guest for this podcast? Is there somebody that makes you curious, somebody that's inspired you from afar or from near? I don't know.
If I could anybody at all, it'd be Brendan Lee Mulligan. But that's just because I'm a huge fan of his work, or Brene Brown. But those are like celebrities. For you as well, I think somebody who has absolutely no idea what gamification is, or even going one step further, and somebody who thinks that gamification is like just fluff. So I think an anti-gamification person would be really interesting to hear their side. Not that I'd agree with it, but just more that it's a helpful perspective, because there are people like that. And so that, I guess that's what I would, like a devil's advocate type of situation.
Love it. There isn't, in fact, I would say, I would have to look into the archives to see specifically. There are people who, depending on how you hear them and what you understand their work is, you could argue that they are in the gamification space formally. That's what they actually do. But they talk against gamification. And a big example would be for some time, not anymore, Jane McGonigal. She is one of the biggest references in gamification.
Yep.
And she used to be openly saying she distastes gamification and that it doesn't make any sense and so on. Another one that we were in conversation, but we switched universities a few years ago, and I missed the contact and haven't done it anymore, is Ian Bogost. The video game designer and scholar. He actually created, it's funny, he created a very dumb game intentionally to show that it didn't make any sense and that people would not fall for it. It was a cow clicker. You literally got points for clicking on the cow. And that was it. There was absolutely nothing else. But it died of its own success. People started clicking obsessively to get more points. Again, with no objective. They were getting nothing out of it. People just got the points, and it was super successful. People went in, started clicking like crazy. So his argument against it ended up being an argument that you could see as in favor. But anyways, those could be two interesting people. Jane McGonigal for different reasons, but Ian Bogost, hopefully we'll have him on the podcast. Yeah. And there is somebody I have interviewed, in fact, a couple of times, that Amy Jo Kim, I don't know if you've heard of her.
I've not.
Game thinking is her perspective. Okay. She likes to say that it's far from gamification. It's definitely not gamification, and I get the argument. But if it's not gamification, it's very closely related, in my opinion. I've told her this. This is not. I'm not doing it sort of behind her back. We've even met in person a couple of times. But those would be interesting people to hear from for sure. They could be definitely on that list. You mentioned Brendan Lee Mulligan, right? Was the first one you mentioned.
Brendan Lee Mulligan. He is an incredibly popular. He's one of the most famous game masters for Dungeons and Dragons. He's a comedian. He's a comedian and professional game master, and he works very closely with Dropout. And so that's he's it's just a fun guy. It's fun to see the way that he crafts stories. I'm a huge fan of watching Dimension 20 on Dropout. So that's why I was if we're talking about games, going with him.
Sounds good. Yeah. And how about a book? Is there any book that you recommend this audience, the Engagers?
Yeah, Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. It's not a gamification book, but rather a kind of deep dive into why we feel like we need to be perfect about things. And I really enjoy it. I'm a huge Brene Brown nerd. I've read almost all of her stuff. But I do recommend that book out of as the place to start. Or if that's the first time you've ever heard the name Brene Brown, she has some of the most popular TED Talks of all time. So it's worth just checking out her TED Talks. Same with, I have a second one. It's Mindset by Carol Dweck. Same idea, where if you go on YouTube and look at her TED Talk, that's one way, and if you don't want to read the book. But that book focuses on the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. She's the one who came up with those, and then that's where it became popularized.
They sound like brilliant recommendations for sure. And how about we ask you about yourself? What is your superpower? What's that thing that you do at least better than most other people?
I'm really good at getting up on stages and being very vulnerable and talking about some of the darkest times of my life, while also then being able to conclude that in a way that is powerful and has a lesson, and then teach people about ableism. That is what I think I am the best at. I'm building a business right now, and everything is hard except the service I provide. So marketing, difficult. Knowing how to actually sell to people, hard. Actually getting up on large stages and sharing information and being silly and weird and eccentric in a way that people will remember and use the information, good at that.
Awesome. How about a difficult question? Hard, fun. What is your favorite game?
If we're talking like board game type of vibes, not board game, but Dungeons and Dragons would be my favorite, like play it in the room type of game. My favorite party game is Business Walrus, which is a card game. And my favorite video game is Dark Cloud 2 from the PlayStation 2 era.
So quite a few recommendations there.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you think of like favorite games, like I can't, like those are all in different categories. Yeah.
As a gaming fan, I would always have a difficult time answering this question as well. So, Sierra, we're arriving to the end of the interview. I want to make sure you have some time to give us any final words, piece of advice, call to action, wherever you want to lead us to, and of course, where we can find out more about you.
Fantastic. I do want to remind people that they get to decide when their backstory ends and their journey begins. Like at any point, you decide, like, I don't like what's happening right now in my life. Just start calling whatever has been happening your backstory and take a different route. And if you want to find me for my speaking engagements or like personal type of things, you can find me at sierragrandy.com. And if you like the Questify Your Life system and that type of content, you can go to my Substack, which is questifyyourlife.substack.com or something like that. Don't know the handle of how Substack's actually set up, but it's something similar to that. I also have a TikTok, which who knows where TikTok is going to be going with all of the stuff happening in the United States, at least, with the TikTok ban. But I do have a TikTok I occasionally use, and that is Questify Your Life, Sierra.
Amazing. Thank you again, Sierra, for coming in today, for investing your time in our audience and the engagers, sharing plenty of your insights. However, Sierra and engagers, as you know, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey, engagers, and thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast. And since you're interested in this world of creating motivation, engagement, loyalty using game-inspired solutions, how about you join us on our free online community at Professor Game on School. You can find the link right below in the description, but the main thing is to click there, join us. It's a platform called School. It's for free, and you will find plenty of resources there. We'll be up to date with everything that we're doing, any opportunities that we might have for you. And of course, before you go on to your next mission, before you click continue, please remember to subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.